Can humans be like geckos? How many times am I going to change my shirt? I've got a BioLite camp stove for you, and the book guys join us for some Podception. Padre's Corner is next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Padre's Corner is provided by Cashfly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Padre's Corner, episode 15, recorded November 21st, 2014 for December 2nd, 2014. Podception, the book guys. Welcome to Padre's Corner. I'm Father Robert Balacer, the digital Jesuit, Padre SJ in the Twit TV chat room. Padre's Corner is a place where we can gather with the geeks, the gals, the guys of chat room and talk about the stories that may have fallen through the cracks. We're going to put you into the mind of a Jesuit priest for an hour and see if you come out sane on the other side. Now, as always, we're going to go ahead and kick it off with a little bit of freaking science. Now, when I lived in Hawaii, it was always a part of the environment to have geckos. Now, geckos were good because if you had a gecko, it meant that it was eating the bugs. It was eating the pestilence. It was eating the insects that made my life miserable. Now, especially for a person like myself, who tends to be a magnet for all things that bite, geckos were more or less a godsend. They were something that allowed me to get through the night without being eaten alive. Now, in fact, for a man who is like me, being bitten by everything, these little creatures weren't just a way to keep down the pest control, but they were kind of a fascination of science. Now, if you've seen a gecko, you know that it can pretty much stick to anything. It'll stick to walls. It'll stick to windows. It will stick to screens. And it does it because of some unique pieces of its anatomy. Now, I'm not the only geek who saw geckos and thought that this should be explored. There were some scientists over at Stanford who took a close look at gecko toes to figure out why it was that they could stick to pretty much any surface. What they found was that the gecko's anatomy is unique and that the toes are filled with microscopic little hairs. These hairs actually form a weak nuclear bond with the molecules in whatever surface that they're trying to stick to. That's right. It's not just a matter of sticking to something. They were actually taking advantage of something that was called the, and I'm going to mess this up, the researchers discovered that when geckos climb, the microscopic hairs that cover the pads of their toes take advantage of van der Waals forces to pull the molecules in the hairs to the molecules in the surface that the gecko is climbing. Of course, that is enough to geek out over, but what's really freaking engineering is the fact that the researchers have been able to duplicate this on a much larger scale. Those researchers over at Stanford have been looking at a way to let people cling to walls. Now, we've seen this in applications beyond just the movies, but most of the ways in which we can stick to surfaces deal with using some sort of suction, some sort of adhesive. It's definitely not the most, elegant solution that you can find. But what Stanford has done is they've tried to imitate what the geckos can do with their little microscopic hairs, and they've come up with a new solution that uses an adhesive pad that they are calling a gecko toe. Now, the gecko toe is unique because what it does is it connects the hand cup to a foot support, and it uses the same van der Waals forces but scaled up so that it can hold a much larger cargo. The device that they've created can hold up to 154 pounds, and it allows a human to climb about 25 feet of sheer glass in 90 seconds. Now, there are limitations, of course, because it's not scaled up to the full size of a gecko toe. It's not really good at irregular surfaces, so you're not going to be climbing mountain walls or trees. And you are limited by the weight capacity of the surface that you're clinging to. So if you're holding onto a piece of glass, unless that piece of glass can actually support your weight, then the gecko toe is not going to be the thing that saves you. Still, maybe in the future, your options for getting up to the upper levels of a building won't be limited to just the stairs or the elevator. Now, this is the time of the show where I like to talk a little about the tech. I'm bringing back an oldie but a goldie, a piece of tech that I've really enjoyed over the years. But you know what? Before we get into the next segment, because when we come back, we're going to be doing sort of a podception thing, a podcast in a podcast. I'm going to check out the stove, and then I'm going to go ahead and change my shirt.
Part furnace, part cooking tool, and part power generator. The BioLite camp stove is a 2-pound forced air biomass burning portable cooking stove with a thermopile twist. Wrapped in its own carrying case, the stove is comprised of 2 pieces, the combustion chamber and the power unit, the latter of which fits snugly into the former for easy packing. The combustion chamber is a double-walled steel cylinder surrounded by a honeycomb lattice that allows you to pick up the stove even when it's hot. It has 3 fold-up legs at the bottom of the unit to give the stove stability while in use. A large vent in the back allows air to be forced into the chamber to increase the efficiency of the burn, and a port at the top of the chamber is the entry point for the heat exchanger. The power unit is a high-impact plastic shell surrounding a heat exchanger and thermopile assembly, battery, and blower. The probe transfers heat from the combustion chamber to the thermopile, which generates electricity to run a fan that forces air into the combustion chamber, generating a hotter flame, which in turn can generate more power. The front of the power unit has a single button to turn the fan on and off, and a silicone-covered USB port that can give the internal battery an initial charge, and, well, that's the twist. The power unit attaches to the back of the combustion chamber and is held in place by a locking mechanism activated by the 3rd support leg. Once assembled, the BioLite camp stove is a stable platform that can be used as a heat source or, with the included triangular cooking attachment, can support kettles, pans, and other cookware. BioLite also offers a 2.5-pound portable grill for those who want a more even heat source for grilling. 2 foldable legs support the grill on top of the BioLite, and a closable flap allows for easy refueling. To use the BioLite camp stove, you loosely fill the combustion chamber with dry fuel, light, wait 10 seconds, then push the power button to activate the blower. The blower forces more air into the combustion chamber, which allows for a more complete, almost smokeless burn and a hotter flame. We used this flame to boil a liter of water in under 5 minutes, and the forced air combustion chamber meant that it was possible to burn biomass that doesn't easily burn, things like cherry pits and walnut shells. As the flame gets hotter, the heat exchanger generates more power, eventually generating more power than is required by the blower. Once this point is reached, the status light at the front of the unit turns green, which means it's now ready to provide that excess power to attached USB devices. To be sure, the excess power isn't a lot. It's rated for a max of 2 watts of 5-volt power. In 15 minutes of burning, I added perhaps 5% of charge to my phone, but it definitely provided USB-compatible charging. A more suitable setup would be to charge a small USB battery that could then be used to power your USB devices. Aside from the hotter flame and USB charging, the power unit adds one more advantage to the BioLite camp stove. At the end of the burn, the fan will continue to blow, burning all the embers down into cold ash, stopping automatically once it's safe. In fact, I was able to pour the ash out of the combustion chamber onto a paper plate with no fire, no embers, and no mess. In all, the BioLite camp stove is an innovative product that should appeal to outdoor enthusiasts, geeks in the wild, and those who just want one more power source in the event of the zombie apocalypse. The BioLite camp stove is available online and at outdoor stores for $130. The portable grill will add $60.
We're going to try something a little different on this episode of Padre's Corner. This is normally where I break out a rant or an extended interview, but, every once in a while, it's fun to collaborate with content creators who are already doing a good thing, which is why I have invited the entire cast of the Book Guys show to come on to Padre's Corner. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you Mr. Paul, Alves, Professor Alan Middleton, and Jimmy Goots. That's right. These are the members of the Book Guys show. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being on Padre's Corner.
Thank you, Padre.
Thanks for having us, Father.
What we're going to do something a little weird. We're actually going to run an abridged version of the Book Guys show. It's going to be run by you. I'm going to switch here on my side. But the idea is to, let your audience see how we do things here on Twit and let our audience see how you do things on the Book Guys. We don't have a book show, so it'll be nice to see what kind of insight you can give us. But before we do that, Paul, you are the book guy. Could I ask you, what was your inspiration for making the Book Guy show? Why a show about books?
Well, Padre, we found that a lot of men and young men in general weren't reading books, and we just wanted to make it cool again to pick up a book or an audiobook and really promote that. We're literacy advocates. And we're trying to make it fun. And sometimes it goes a little blue. We'll try to be nice today because we're on the live stream. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Trying to get more men reading.
Now, Paul, I understand why you are doing this show, because you are a printer, you're a publisher, so you have an interest in this industry. But then I got to ask, what made you pick up this ragtag team of book guys? I mean, you got a pretty eclectic group.
Yeah, since we're on episode, this is episode 118. We're gonna steal your video and use it as our episode 118. But our crew has changed over the years. Episode 1 was a completely different dynamic, completely different group of individuals. And in fact, both Professor Allen and Sir Jimmy, and I believe even yourself, all came to the show as listeners who eventually got incorporated as special guests and are now full-time Book Guys hosts. And I mean, we get along. I think Sir Jimmy said it before that we'd probably do this for an hour a week, even if we weren't recording, just to chat and get new book recommendations. And we talk about all kinds of geekery, Padre. You know that we go way off the book thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, what I like about the group that you've gathered is you've all got different specialties, if I can call that. I mean, in literature, for example, Professor Allen, you are probably the biggest comic book buff that I know, and I work with a person who works in the comic industry. Tell us, I mean, why do you find graphic novels so entertaining?
I've found them that way for almost all my life. Well over 35 years I've been a comic book reader, and it's the storytelling. I simply enjoy that type of literature, and much of it certainly qualifies as literature. And I like to think that I was a comic book fan before comic books were cool.
And of course, we are rounded out by royalty. A man only known as Sir Jimmy. Some people say that he's filled with the works of Shakespeare. Other people say that he's just crazy. All we know is we call him Sir Jimmy. Sir Jimmy, what brought you to the Book Guys?
Well, I connected with Paul Alves through another podcast that we were both big fans of, which shall remain nameless. But we connected through this podcast, and I found out he did a podcast about books. I started listening to that. He had two other guys that were doing the show with him, and one day he's like, hey, you want to come on the show? And I come on the show, and then one of the other guys like, oh, cool, maybe I'm going to skate out now. And he got into a new business. Then the other guy disappeared, and then we brought some other people in, Professor Allen. You know, we have Craig Damlow, who used to be on, he had his own podcast, which I listened to when I got my first iPod back in 2005. He was doing a podcast called the Singularity Podcast, and he's like a sciencey guy. I was listening to that and email him, and, you know, over the years, sort of stayed in contact. Then Twitter came out, bring him on the show. You know, you were on the show with us for a while. So it's kind of in flux, but this is kind of, you know, the three of us right now are solidified.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you for coming on to Padre's Corner. This is where we're actually going to kick off an episode of The Book Guys. Are you ready to do some of your magic?
Let's do it.
Okay. I'm going to switch from my side, but in case you've never watched The Book Guys show, this is how they typically kick it off.
I love that.
And yeah, you know what I like? I like autoplay.
Yeah, it happens, Padre. That was made by Bill Meeks from Meeks Mixed Media, who I believe has been on a couple of the Twitch shows as well. And he's also the author of Dog Boy Adventures. And you are watching, I almost said listening. You are watching episode 118 of the Book Guys show entitled Padre's Corner. My name is Paul Alves, also known as, we have jingles, Padre. We do have the jingles.
Paul the Book Guy.
And over in somewhere in California, friend and former host.
Father Robert.
How you doing, Padre?
I'm just fine. I'm pretty good. I'm sitting here in the Twit Brick House, so what could be better, really?
Yeah, and thank you so much.
Not gone and not forgotten.
Hey, let's not forget the guy in the bottom corner there, the one and only.
That's right, here in lovely North Carolina.
Where there is
Great
no
to be-
snow like in Buffalo.
Oh, no. We had some 20-degree weather this week, but my wife, she went on an Amazon buying spree, and it all showed up today. I got a new Columbia jacket, a thermal underwear, electric socks, take 9-volt batteries, everything.
But the polar vortex is over. Why would you need all that?
No,
Yeah.
it's coming back. They just have to rebrand it.
Right. And when it comes to comics, you can't forget the one and only.
Hello from Ohio, where there is still snow on the ground.
Wait, they have snow in Ohio? I thought it was all just flowers and what do they grow in Ohio?
Corn,
Okay, that. Sorry.
Oh.
football players.
Now,
You know,
Padre, a lot of your viewers don't know how we normally start the show, and we normally kind of casually mention what we've been reading. Well, the stuff that we like that we've been reading. We don't always mention everything we've been reading because sometimes we don't want to waste the listeners' time by talking about the crap.
That sounds like a great idea.
So let's do this. I know it's kind of weird because we don't have video jingles, so the jingles are just playing in the background.
What's on your?
What's on your Kindle, your nightstand?
What's on your?
What's on your iPad, your iPhone?
What are you reading?
Let's start it off with let's ask Padre. Padre, what have you been reading?
Okay, so I'm thinking you probably covered this on the book guys already. There's been a couple of things on my devices. Number one has been an audiobook and an actual book by the name of The Martian by Andy Weir. I just had him on last week's Padres Corner. I have listened to that book literally, I think 46 times now. I geek out so much over it because every time I listen to it, there's more details. I'm just thinking, wow, he actually got most of the science right. And actually last week, if you watched last week's podcast, Mr. Weir talks about how he did fudge a few things just to make the book more interesting. But the fact that he knows that he fudged them, it just makes me really like it. Also, I got to say, I've been really getting back into comics. I just finished the entire Green Lantern series. Like I had stopped reading it back in the 90s, and I have now caught up. And I got to say, it's so kind of hurtful that the movie was so bad because it is a really good series. I think it might be one of the best properties in the DC universe.
Good series.
Yeah.
And let's move on to Mr. Goots. What's up with you?
You know me, I kind of back away when the comic books talk starts. Trying to leave a lot of space. I just got a bunch of audiobooks that all just showed up at once, and the one I was most excited about was Andrew Dice Clay's new book called The Filthy Truth, which he wrote with David Ruiz and was performed by Bruce Rubenstein. And it's about his life, from being a kid, getting beat up and trying to get attention. He's growing up in Brooklyn and all the way up through trying to be a stand-up, going out his first time. And the very first thing he did, he dressed up as the Nutty Professor and came out acting all, like the Nutty Professor, real nerdy. And he was telling everybody that he has this magic potion he's going to take. And it's amazing. And it turns him into the most interesting guy in the world. And he turns around, he slicks his hair back, and he throws on this leather jacket, and he takes out the fake teeth he has and tucks his shirt in, and he turns around, and he's John Travolta. And he goes through the whole grease lightning in your head, and I like that, and he totally spot on. And he just did that for a year, and Rodney Dangerfield finally put him on an HBO special, and he blew up, and he was the first guy to ever do a comedy in arenas. Not 200 and 300 seats, but he was filling Madison Square Garden 3 days in a row. And, making millions of dollars. Then he got on the wrong side of somebody in Hollywood, and they trashed his Ford Fairlane movie, and he crashed out, went through like 3 wives, and just interesting. He was always a comic that I enjoyed. He's very, very blue. I don't think he would be able to come on Padre's Corner, but interesting book. Not a lot of twists and turns, but getting in depth. I've been really getting into comedy lately, listening to a couple different podcasts with up-and-coming comedians, and he has been on some of them lately, and you kind of know when somebody comes out of the woodwork, what are they promoting? And sure enough, this book came out, but I finished it quicker than I've finished a book in a long time. Started yesterday morning, finished it by today at lunch. Recommended.
That's all?
That's it. Well, that's it for me. And next up, I'm thinking about actually going for 2,000 leagues, or no, 20,000. Oh my goodness, 20,000 leagues under the sea. Jules Verne, going back to something classical to cleanse myself after the injury.
You had the abridged version, 2,000 leagues under the sea.
Yes. Yeah. I don't have time for that.
And Professor, what's on your nightstand?
Well, I want to second the father's recommendation that The Martian is just terrific. It's just terrific because it's hard science fiction, which can sometimes leave characters and plot elements behind as it puts the hard science first and foremost. But Weir doesn't do that in this book. It's equal parts hard sci-fi, character, plot. There's some funny moments too, which you don't often get in the hardest of hard sci-fi. And I've listened to it once. My daughter Emily's probably listened to it 7 or 8 times. So she's definitely in Padre's camp in terms of just re-listening and reliving that story. For my own, what I'm just at the very beginning stages of is a book by a Harvard University professor. Don't let that scare you off. It is still comic book related. It is The Secret History of Wonder Woman by Jill Lepore. And the creator of Wonder Woman has a very interesting biography, including he was a psychologist, and among his experimental works were works that led to the creation of the lie detector test. So no surprise that one of Wonder Woman's main weapons is a lasso that makes people tell the truth. And let's just say he had some interesting views on relationships and certainly liked strong women, and his relationships with women were intriguing. And in retrospect, you can read a lot of things into some of those early Wonder Woman stories. And then, so that's the thick, serious book that I'm working my way through. And then just earlier today, I recorded a podcast episode covering a terrific comic book from the early 1980s. I believe this was actually cover dated December 1979. Rom's Space Knight #1, the greatest of the Space Knights.
Oh, no way.
Terrific issue, by the way.
I completely forgot that series. That was actually an awesome series.
There's been problems with because it's a toy tie-in. It was a Parker Brothers toy that they sold the license to for, Marvel got the license to create this just incredible world and incredible comic series. But the rights issues have been so tied up that the issues have never been reprinted. There's almost no chance of a Rom Space Knight movie because of questions about which corporations who've purchased Parker Brothers in the past and Marvel, and the legal issues are so entwined and complicated.
Can you give us the backstory of Rom? I forgot. I mean, I remember he would make an occasional crossover in the Marvel universe. Yes, I even had a few of his issues.
Yeah, very, very, very few. He was part of the greater Marvel universe, but was mostly a standalone stories. And he arrives in a small town, West Virginia, and his thing is that he is looking for his people's mortal enemies, the dire wraiths, and they can appear as anything. They're shapeshifters. And he has a couple of weapons. He has an analyzer that can tell him if this is a real person or if it's a dire wraith, and then a neutralizer to send them to limbo. And the problem is that he's the only one that can see these. I mean, in essence, the classic sci-fi movie, classic in quotes, They Live, is basically Rom with Roddy Piper instead of Rom the Space Knight, but conceptually the same thing. So he is going around basically blowing people away, but he's blowing bad guys away. But no one quite believes him just yet.
So he's killing things, but in a good way.
Yeah.
Exactly. It just makes sense.
It's one of those characters that I vaguely remember. Like, I remember thinking he was cool. I remember the analyzer.
Right.
And that's about it. I remember he lots of chrome, but that was about it.
and the books ran into the mid '80s, and then when the series ended again, they've never been able to reprint the series because of the rights issues. So the only place to find it is in single issues in your back issue bin at your local comic shop. But well worth it if you find them. 25 cents is what I paid for it. I try not to go above that.
Order bin.
Exactly.
And I've been, I just finished actually this new Stephen King revival, and I was pleasantly surprised. First of all, that it's under 400 pages. It does not, although I listened to the audio, it would not be a hardcover you could kill someone with, like some of his previous tomes. It's about a small boy. He's playing with his toy soldiers in a small New England town, and quite literally, a shadow is cast over his life. As he looks up, where's this shadow coming from? It's the new priest in town. And the story goes through their relationship over the next 50 years. It starts off pretty much like a slice of life book. You wouldn't know it was a horror or a fantasy. And quite quickly, within the first couple chapters, Stephen King hits you hard in the third chapter and gives you a little taste of what's coming next. And I was pleasantly surprised with this one. Gotta say, the most dreadful, awful ending to a Stephen King book ever. Not that it was bad or poorly written. I mean, dreadful, literally inspiring dread and horror. And just, wow, what an ending. And that's the only reason I don't want to spoil any more of the plot, because it really does sort of lead you there very well. Very tight, very well edited. Check it out, for sure. Stephen King's revival. Okay, yeah, and next up on my reading list is, and this actually was a topic we were looking at to do on the Book Ice show about the paperbacks that were distributed to troops in the United States, or American troops in World War II, and how they actually did help win the war. And I discovered this book. It's called When Books Went to War, The Stories That Helped Us Win World War II by Molly Guptill Manning. And she goes through how not only did the shipping of these paperbacks to American soldiers create the whole paperback craze, it also did help a lot of the soldiers in the, guys that were like, pinned down and just knew that their life was probably going to end and they had nothing else to do other than sit there and eat beans out of a can. Well, they had these books, and a lot of them said it's what got them psychologically through the war. And she goes through anecdotes of soldiers who had seen such horrific things that, they're sitting in the hospital and they're thinking, I'm never going to smile again. And then they picked up one of these paperbacks that were being distributed by the publishers, and it really turned things around for them, where they were chuckling, in the hospital bed, and realized that maybe life was still worth living, and maybe they would get over all the horrors they'd seen. So really interesting. I really want to check that one out. Haven't read it yet.
Cool. All right.
We'll report back soon.
What's next?
What's up next, my friend, is, as usual, we're going to play a jingle. We're going to go through our book news.
Book news.
Take it away, Alan.
Alan, you're muted.
The creator of the Choose Your Own Adventure series has passed away. R.A. Montgomery. Now, the Choose Your Own Adventure series are the 4th best-selling book series for children of all time. He died on November 9th at age 78. The cause of death has not been disclosed. We like to think it hasn't been decided yet.
Right. And by the way, he's inspired a lot of books. So not all Choose Your Own Adventures were written by him, including Neil Patrick Harris's autobiography entitled Choose Your Own Autobiography, where you could literally, he gets to like pivotal points in his life, and he says, well, do you want to date this man?
What? Paul, your connection's dying again. One of the funny things is I got to ask, when you were doing Choose Your Own Adventure books when you were a kid, did you leave a finger in the previous page so you could go back if you made the wrong decision? I'll fess up to that. I didn't just leave a finger. I actually had slips of paper so I could jump back several decisions.
Well, I mean, that's what being a completist is all about. You have to work your way through all the possible adventures. That way, when you read it the second time, you know the choices you want to make.
What about you, Sir Jimmy?
I never really did much Choose Your Own Adventure stuff, but it seems like there's been a lot of references to it in pop culture over the years. But I even heard, I can't remember where it was that it might have been on. My gosh, somebody mentioned in the chat room that awful show, Big Bang Theory. It was the tall, skinny guy. He's reading something, and he goes back. No, I didn't go in the cave. No.
Oh, okay. Next
book news. It turns out that paper books may still have a use. Everybody probably seen just this week that there was a active shooter at Florida State University. Probably upset with the fact that their football team's undefeated and everything's great and sunny down there, so just couldn't take it. But like 3 or 4 people got shot. The shooter got killed. But one guy who was in and around the shooting came home. He had just left the library where he checked out 3 books. And he got home, was going through his backpack, and noticed that one of the books had a bullet buried, like clear through it and into the back cover of the book, possibly saving his life. So it pays to read, kids.
Reading.
Here's a guy that's hollowing out his book the hard way.
Yeah, these ones won't save you.
You guys can hear me and see me now.
It's quite a thrill.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, can you hear me still?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. So let's move on to the next story, which is, of course, new Barbie kids book is wrong in so many ways. Well, it's not a new book. It was published in 2010. It's just been discovered by some vigilant parents. Mattel has apologized because the book entitled Barbie, I Can Be a Computer Engineer basically says that she can't be an engineer. Not only does she not become one, but when tasked with making a video game, she says, quote, I am only creating the design ideas. I'll need Steven's and Brian's help to turn into a real game. But it gets worse. Later on, Padre, Barbie's computer starts blinking, and when she she says that's a computer virus. It turns out she's the one who installed the virus on the computer with her heart-shaped USB drive. And then
this sounds like one of those ripped from the headlines types thing where they're like, oh yeah, USB drives are bad now, and girls, they want to learn about computers, so we're going to make a toy that puts a bunch of popular stories from tech news, and now it's the smarter toy for girls growing up. I get so sick of this stuff. I mean, we see it in pretty much every industry where you're dumbing down toys because you want them to feel smart, but at the same time you want it to feel sugar-coated. I don't know.
Well, not only does this book make young girls feel dumb that they can't be computer engineers, but it goes on to say that she goes into a classroom later in the book where a female teacher teaches her that in order to fix her computer that has a virus, she has to take the hard drive out of her infected computer and put it into someone else's poor defenseless computer.
Of course, that's natural. That's a step you have to take.
Fat Barbie. Parents, do not buy that book for your children. It is being pulled off shelves by Mattel.
In the sequel, she goes to host a podcast this week in bad tech.
That's right.
True story.
Padre, we're going to move on from the book news. Other than, one more story here. Bookguys.ca, new one coming out next year. We're rebuilding the site from scratch, adding quite a few more contributors, and seeing if we can do something new and fresh. And Sir Jimmy, we're going to go on and do this. No, we're not going to do Prize again. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to do the Book Guy of the Year award, my friend. Now, Padre, this is an award that is it's not yearly, and it's not even an award. No one actually gets anything. But what we do is once in a while, we pick someone out there that is helping bring reading to children and adults and just literacy advocates around the world. And last time we gave it away, I don't know, Padre, if you can get the video up, for the Biblio Burro, who was Luis Soriano from Colombia, I believe. He was our first award winner. And because of his work, literally taking a donkey all around Colombia to the little rural towns, he got the award for bringing all those books to children. And this year, we're going to give it to, I'm going to try to pronounce this, Dash Dundog Jamba, who, finding a lack of burros in the Gobi Desert in Mongolia, decided to take his books on a camel. So for the last 20 years, Dash Dundong has traveled over 50,000 miles across the rural areas and deserts of Mongolia, bringing books to children. And I'd like to start a Kickstarter to buy them some Kindles so he doesn't have to cart these things around by camel,
A camel cart, a camel book, I don't know. I got nothing.
But can you imagine devoting 20 years of your life and doing that 50,000 miles to bring the joy of books to children? That's incredible, as Nerve just said in the chat room.
Well, he gets my vote.
Professor Allen, we got some podcasts this week, do we not?
We do.
Let's do it. We got one anyways.
At the beginning of the show, you saw our magnificent title sequence, which was created by Bill Meeks. And we wanted to give a shout out to his book series, The Dog Boy Adventures. He is podcasting some of those books over at his website, www.dogboyadventures, all one word, .com.
Yes, Meeks Mix Media, The Dog Boy Adventures are available on Amazon as well. And but if you want to listen to the audio, there is the podcast. Fantastic. Also available on Audible. We're going to move on, Jimmy. We're going to do this quick because we're running out of time. But I know that you might have some treats for someone in the chat room or one of our listeners to find.
Welcome to Prize of Ganza.
I love that. It's so game showy, What you got, Jimmy?
Well, you guys can see here on my my little lower third here, freeallthebooks.com is a website that I run where I take books. Every book you see here on the shelf is hollowed out, which means there's a big hole cut inside of it so you can hide things, whatever. Like this big giant Jane Austen book, you can hide things inside of this. So it's called freeallthebooks.com because somebody took hollowbooks.com. So I decided, since I was getting a bunch of these books free off of the free shelf at our local bookstore, I said, well, I'll call it freeallthebooks.com. People say, well, why is it free all the books? Where's the free one? So every month I give one away for free. But it's kind of hidden. You just got to read all the silly descriptions and figure out which one it is. And if you click on it, it goes, boo, hey, you found it. But nobody even found it in October. So it's still sitting there in November. And I posted in the chat room here 10 or 15 minutes ago, go find it. It's free. I want to give one away to somebody on Twit, on Padre's Corner. So go get it. It's free.
Go find. Now, no one in the chat room is watching the show. They're all at Free Hollow Books trying to find the free book.
It's on there. The first one email he gets it, ship free anywhere in the world.
Oh, we doing on time, Padre? Can we do some books on film and television?
Yeah, you know what? I think we have just enough time to talk about that because that's fascinating what you got in the doc.
All right, we'll close it off with books on film and television then.
Books on
on film and television.
Well, I want to start just by. I want to start by saying I am really enjoying this current year's crop of comic book themed TV shows, especially The Flash. Is just capturing the light, joyous spirit that comic books should be. And upcoming, I think next week, is a big Flash and Arrow crossover. And that is an old-time comic book trick, the crossover, occasionally done on TV shows before. But this is the first big one of this season. The story's going to start on Flash next Tuesday and end on Arrow on Wednesday. And I've just been digging The Flash.
Yeah, I've been enjoying it myself. Yeah, I mean, it's got a good balance between, you know, a good use of CGI. I'm just sort of, I know that it's Flash and Arrow are a separate universe. I was hoping that they would do what Marvel's done, which is incorporate all these wonderful shows into their movies as well. But apparently they're breaking it up.
Yeah.
And,
That, you know, that can hamstring the TV shows a little too much. I think that's a little bit of what happened with Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. last year. They had to hit certain episodes, certain topics at certain points in the season to line up with the movie releases. And, you know, I think there were some lulls, there were some slow points in the season because they, you know, they were forced to fit into the movie continuity. So, you know, there's trade-offs with either way that you do it.
You know, the crossover, the crossover is really that's the core of the comic book world, right? I mean, that's the whole reason why we geek out over the Avengers. It's this idea that you can have a bunch of characters that you've liked in their titles, their movies, their books, and then suddenly they team up and you just have a geekgasm. And I think DC's starting to do that with the TV series. They're way behind in the movies, way behind Marvel. But that's where the money is, right? I mean, you're going to get your blockbuster out of characters that may not be great. I mean, Iron Man wasn't that great in the comic books. It was okay. It wasn't A-list. Captain America was kind of like, well, you have to have the Captain America, but no one really bought the title. Hawkeye, Black Widow, really? But when you team them up, suddenly it's got heat.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, and then, you know, one of the legends is they started with Iron Man, you know, for this current wave of movies because, man, he was safe. It was sort of, you know, take a chance. If you mess it up, no one really cares about Iron Man. It's not that big a deal. You know, if that movie's not that good, not that popular, you know, low risk proposition because no one really cared that much about Iron Man.
Hey, Professor Allen, what would you say be a good comic book for someone wanting to get into comic books right now would be? There was a couple questions in the chat room. I'm not sure if you saw it, but somebody's like, where would they start? How would you hook them?
You know, I do have an answer. It is an impossible question to answer in the sense that in the same way if someone asked, I like reading, what book should I read? Do you like mysteries? Do you like science fiction, etc.? But the place to start is your public library. Because a public library most likely has a collection of they're called trade paperback editions, collected editions of comic books, usually 6 or 8 or 10 comic books collected at a time that can be checked out. And that's just the place to go, just to start browsing. A low-cost, low-risk way.
Yeah,
because
great way to
comic books, if you're buying new comics off the shelves, which I don't do a lot of these days, the cheap ones are $3 a piece. Many are $4 a piece. So wait a few months. I'm usually 6 months behind on my comic book reading because I wait for the collected editions to come out. Either purchase those or check them out from the library. Give them a test run before the purchase.
Absolutely. Maybe we have time for one more story, Padre, before we go.
I think we could do one more, then you got to wrap it.
All right, we'll wrap it right after that. But we got to break this out because we have a couple of Stephen King fans in the audience here, and The Stand is being adapted as 4 movies by Warner Brothers. 4. After a year of back and forth with Warner Brothers director Josh Boone, reports that the studio came back to him one day with a counter proposal and said, well, instead of doing all that, would you consider doing multiple films, maybe 4? And he said, F yes. So it's currently being planned as 4 high-budget blockbusters. And we're pretty much out of time, are we not, Padre?
Unfortunately, yeah, we're going to have to wrap up this special edition of the Book Guys Show. How do you guys normally end it?
We normally play a little end jingle and say goodbye to everyone.
I think we could kick it off.
Let's do it. Thank you so much, Padre, for having us in your corner. You know we're in your corner. Thank you, Professor Allen.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Father.
Thank you, Father. It's great to have a Padre in our corner.
That's right. See you next week. Same book time.
Never hurts.
Stay tuned, readers and listeners. Book Guide Show will return next week. Same book time, same book channel.
And that's usually how we end it, Padre.
Gentlemen, thank you so very much. And
thanks for squeezing us in, Padre.
Of course. It's been so much. I love talking about books, and you know what? Hopefully this will become a more advanced sequence that we can use inside Padre's Corner, because there's some great podcasts out there, and I want the world to know about them. Gentlemen, you take care.
Thank you,
sir. See you, Padre.
I want to thank Paul Alves and all the book guys for coming onto the show for a little bit of Podception. It's a segment we're going to try every once in a while, maybe once a month, where we bring in podcasters who maybe have a decent product, some good content, but they don't quite have maybe the distribution of a Twit TV. We want to show the world to them and them to the world. You're going to find it here on Padre's Corner. I'm afraid that's all the time we have for this episode of Padre's Corner. Don't forget that you can always find us at our show page. Just drop by twit.tv/Padre, and you'll find all of our episodes, including the notes for the stories that I cover each and every single week. And you'll also find a little drop-down menu where you'll be able to subscribe so you can get every single episode automatically in the device of your choice. You want to get our audio version into your iPod so that you can listen to us in the car ride to work? You can do that. You want to get the video version on your Android tablet so you can watch us during your breaks? You could do that. Do you want to get the high-definition version in your Mac, your PC, your desktop, your laptop, so that you can stream it on your HD TV? You can do that. It's all part of the love we got for you here at Twit TV. Don't forget, you can also find out about me by going to my Twitter page at twitter.com/PadreSJ. If you go there, you'll find out what I do each and every single week for all the episodes of all the shows I do on Twit TV. Twilight at 2:30 on Mondays, where I talk about networking and the data center. Also, don't forget, I do Know-How on Thursdays at 11 o'clock and Coding 101 at 1:30, so that you can get a little bit of knowledge, a little DIY spirit. And, of course, there's Padre's Corner here every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. Until next time, I'm Father Robert Balacer. He came out sane on the other side.